Why are garbage incinerators such a bad deal for communities? In this episode of Local Energy Rules, John Farrell, director of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance's Energy Democracy Initiative, is joined by me, Marie Donahue, and Neil Seldman, co-founder of ILSR and director of the Waste to Wealth Initiative, to discuss why designating garbage burning as a renewable energy resource is so problematic. The three sat down for a recent episode of the Institute's Building Local Power podcast, which we have reproduced here to highlight the harmful impacts of burning trash to generate electricity, and what steps cities like Baltimore are taking to shut down these dirty facilities and build a healthier local clean energy future. This is the latest episode of Local Energy Rules, a podcast sharing powerful stories about local renewable energy.
I'm John Farrell, co-director of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. With me this week are Marie Donahue, ILSR researcher and author of Waste Incineration, A Dirty Secret in How States Define Renewable Energy. Welcome, Marie.
Thanks for having me, John.
Also with me is Neil Seldman, ILSR co-founder, director of our Waste to Wealth initiative, and the death knell to dozens of garbage incinerators across the country. Welcome, Neil.
Pleasure to be here with both you and Marie.
Today I'm excited to talk to the two of you about how communities can save money, have healthier kids, and create more jobs by shutting down garbage incinerators. And I'd like to start with something very recent. Neil, I was hoping you could explain how a recent city council decision in Baltimore will impact the Wheelabrator incinerator that's responsible for so much of the city's industrial pollution.
About 2 weeks ago, the city council voted unanimously 14-0 with one absent person, one city council member absent, who would have voted for the act as well. But the Baltimore Clean Air Act sets new standards for both burning garbage and burning hospital and hazardous waste in the city of Baltimore. It requires that both incinerators meet state-of-the-art best practices in pollution control equipment. It requires constant monitoring coming out of the incinerator, which is technologically possible, and it also requires that the information on the constant monitoring be made public on a web page, as is being done in Montgomery County, Maryland, just to the south of Baltimore, Maryland. The situation in Baltimore is slightly different from Montgomery County, which we can get into. But in Baltimore, the Wheelabrator company owns a facility called Bresco, Bresco. And that facility is about 35 to 40 years old. The city sends its non-recycled waste to that incinerator in downtown Baltimore. Most of the materials generated in Baltimore go there because the city has a very low recycling rate, estimated between 14 and 19%. By comparison, the national average is 34%, and of course some cities are at 50, 60, and 70%. So if the city stopped sending its garbage there, in theory, because it's a privately owned facility, that facility can import garbage from anywhere they want to, Baltimore County, New York City, to fill in for the garbage that is not delivered by the city. However, with the passage of this law, it is not signed yet. Mayor Pugh has said she was going to sign it. It has not happened yet. It will become law if she doesn't sign it in about 5 or 6 days. It will become law. The importance of the law, it will require any facility, private or public, to meet these new standards, and it will therefore prevent the incinerator from continuing to operate with private sector trash or public trash if it does not make the adjustments to pollution control that will allow it to meet best available control technology. Vice President of the Wheelabrator Corporation already mentioned that if this law came to pass, they will probably, actually he said certainly have to shut the incinerator because the cost of putting on new pollution control equipment is about $70 million, and that pollution control equipment will require about $11 million a year of operating expenses. These expenses for the corporation are just too much for it to continue operating this plant. In theory, it could knock down the plant and build another, a more modern plant. But that is highly unlikely. The legislation can be used in at least 11 other states, according to Mike Ewald, who wrote the bill. He works for the Energy Justice Network, and there are about 11 other states that where this strategy can be used, and that would include at least 8 other existing old incinerators. Detroit, Annapolis, among those 8 other cities that have existing plants.
Great. Well, let's plan to come back to that too, because I want to talk about at the end sort of a big wrap up with some of the findings in Marie's report, as well as this, Neil, what is that cities can do. I want to talk a little bit about why Baltimore took this direction in terms of the incinerator, and was hoping, Marie, that you could give us some of big picture here. In your report about incineration and renewable energy, you talk about 3 reasons that incinerators in general are a bad deal for communities. And I was hoping that you could just kind of walk us through those reasons so we can understand why it is a community like Baltimore is having such an issue with this particular facility.
In this report we released in December, late last year, we overview these 3 reasons that we found in the literature and in our reporting about why municipal solid waste incinerators are such a bad deal. The first being that the economics of these facilities really don't add up, that incinerators are risky investments for the local governments and utilities that are helping support and subsidize them, particularly as energy prices decline, and that there are these more price competitive alternatives, which we'll get into a little bit more as well. A growing number of these plants are unable to cover their operating costs or the substantial investments needed to really maintain or as Neil was talking about, implement new pollution controls. And so they're costly to operate and maintain to remain competitive. And so we've seen recent examples in California and in Minnesota where existing facilities are not able to offer contracts for electricity at a competitive rate. In that case, in California, for example, that helped lead to the closure of one of the state's remaining facilities. Related to this economics point, the tip fees, or what waste haulers pay to dispose of waste at incinerators, are often quite a bit more costly than alternatives. So we see 2 to 3 times higher rates of tip fee disposal than comparable recycling or composting costs, which, again, I'm here with Neil, our expert, so he can perhaps touch on some of that too as he gets more into the waste side of the equation. And we also see that jobs, sort of local jobs, which are generated at incinerators, are quite a bit less than other alternatives. So we see four times the number of jobs per unit of waste in composting sites, for example. So really there are better alternatives that exist when you look at these plants through an economics lens. We also see the impacts on public health, and that was a big motivator for, it sounds like, the Baltimore case certainly, but incinerators are these classic cases of environmental injustice in the communities that they've been located in. They're often sited in neighborhoods that are predominantly made up of people with lower incomes, people of color, as the Energy Justice Network has illustrated in some really great maps that we feature in the report. And so Neil has mentioned them. They've done some great work documenting, again, the harmful, costly, and avoidable public health risks that these incinerators present to the local communities that are living nearby. And we also talk a little bit, I think, a little more about that dynamic with partners from EJN, the Energy Justice Network, and then also another great organization, Gaia, who's done more work in a webinar that we hosted on the report in January. So can point folks more to that resource. And then finally, we, especially in looking at this through our energy democracy lens and the impacts that incinerators have on the energy sector, we argue the third point being that renewable trash, which these incinerators are often being classified under, is really a legal oxymoron. It doesn't really make sense that burning garbage would be considered a renewable resource, but it is in the majority of states where incinerators are located. We have 52 plants operating in states that do classify trash burning as a renewable source of energy. So these are three reasons that we definitely see communities pushing back against this dirty practice, and we highlight those three in our report.
Marie, thank you. I wanted to jump back and ask Neil specifically about how some of these large-scale issues apply in the case of Baltimore. Just very quickly, though, is Maryland one of those states that counts burning trash as renewable energy?
Exactly, yes. It is one of those states.
In fact, it's the only one in the country that gives garbage incinerators a Tier 1 status within the renewable portfolio's standard system, which allows it to get even more money that we think should be going to wind and solar and truly renewable sources of energy.
So, Neil, Marie also talked about the health and pollution problems from the incinerators in general being a big issue, the environmental justice implications. It seems like that's a pretty fair description of what was going on in Baltimore. So I'm just curious, was that true in the work that you've done there, that the pollution was having that disproportionate impact on people of color and low-income residents? And is it true as well that the city could save money with other waste processing options?
Both are true. The Institute did a report in 2017 detailing the potential cost reductions and money savings for the city if it were to transition away from the incinerator. I've been fighting garbage incinerators for over 45 years now, and it's fascinating that people get aroused because of the fear of pollution impacting their health and the environment. Ultimately, it's the economics that moves people to make the decision. In Baltimore, it was a healthy combination of both. In terms of the pollution, I'll point out that, John, you mentioned 50%. The Bresco incinerator accounts for exactly 36% of the industrial pollution in the city, as measured by the U.S. EPA. And these health costs are very significant. Dante Swinton, an organizer for Energy Justice Network in Baltimore, did the numbers, and he estimated that the cost to the city annually, that is the city, the businesses, and the people in the city, is about $153 million a year. And that is comprised of absentee workers who are sick with asthma and other ailments, school children that miss school and also have to go to emergency room for asthmatic conditions. That's quite a hefty bill that the government, businesses, and citizens have to pay. And the stimulus for trying to shut down an existing incinerator came from Curtis Bay, which is an industrially zoned community at the southern tip of Baltimore. And about 4 years ago, the private industry was planning a 4,000 ton per day garbage incinerator in the middle of Curtis Bay, which is already the heaviest polluted zip code in Baltimore. And this triggered simmering discontent in the community, which is low-income, mixed white people, black people, Latino people, and Asian people. They were absolutely fed up when this 4,000 ton per day incinerator was announced, the plan for it. And through incredibly well-organized citizens led by United Workers and their staff, who all live in the community and went to Ben Franklin High School. These adults and young people, also adults, but just out of high school and in college, came up with incredible tactics, videos, small meetings, many small meetings, which mobilized the city. Among their best tactics was a video produced by the young people in the community that was sent around to the museums, the school systems in the city and the region that had pledged to buy electricity from this planned garbage incinerator. And the video made it clear that this was dirty electricity. And one by one, these institutions withdrew their offers to buy electricity from this source. That was a major accomplishment, and it led to lawyers and doctors and organizers from other issues on the environment to join United Workers. Energy Justice Network did a whole lot of work. The Institute, myself and Brenda Platt did a lot of work. The Institute's work was pointing to specific examples of what government, industry, and citizens have been doing to implement alternative systems that do not have incineration. We supported the Filbert Street Garden, which is a community institution in Curtis Bay. We raised money to build a compost pad. That compost pad is now the basis for a collection program in nearby neighborhoods that picks up organic waste from households and businesses, brings them back to the garden for composting and reuse. The program involves young people and also small children. There's an elementary school right across the street. The children are growing flowers, fruits, vegetables. It's quite an institution. All of this mobilized the community, both from the fear of pollution and the possibilities that the 90 acres that was going to be devoted to the incinerator could now become a green industrial park with recycling, composting, solar energy projects. So the community was turned around into what's possible. It energized their mobilization, and after the defeat of the planned incinerator in Curtis Bay, there was a seamless transition to focus on the existing incinerator. And of course, environmental justice did a great job in documenting the pollution. I also want to tip my hat to Environmental Justice Network because they also went deep into the weeds working with communities surrounding the incinerator who suffer the most from the pollution, and raised money and developed a pilot recycling program. Baltimore has a very low recycling rate. There are reasons for it. The DPW, the Department of Public Works in the city, just hasn't paid attention to recycling and composting. And the Energy Justice Network pilots showed that citizens with the proper cards, proper information, and proper incentives, they were recycling at 39%. The city's average is anywhere from 14 to 19%, so virtually a doubling of the recycling rate just by paying attention and proving that low-income people, black, white, or green, will recycle and want to recycle.
So, Neil, this is terrific. I was just gearing up to ask you the question about how this mobilization happened around the Wheelabrator and that led to this city policy. And so I appreciate you just jumping right in and talking about that Curtis Bay planned incinerator and the way that the community had rallied around it. We're going to take a quick break here, and but when we come back, we're going to talk about how many states are providing subsidies to trash burning through renewable energy definitions, which we touched on before. I'd like to dive into how industry consolidation is helping the incinerator industry, and then also to talk a little bit more about what we've already heard about is, what communities can do instead of hosting trash burners in terms of waste processing and things that they can do to create jobs and healthier jobs in their community.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Local Energy Rules with ILSR staff Marie Donahue and Neil Seldman joining our host John Farrell. A version of this conversation was released last month as part of the Institute's Building Local Power podcast, featuring topics and stories about how communities can build power locally while challenging concentrated corporate power across our economy. Now stay tuned for more local energy highlights from this episode after a short message from our Energy Democracy Initiative Director, John Farrell.
Hey, thanks for listening to Local Energy Rules. If you've made it this far, you're obviously a fan, and we could use your help for just 2 minutes. As you've probably noticed, we don't have any corporate sponsors or ads for any of our podcasts. The reason is that our mission at ILSR is to reinvigorate democracy by decentralizing economic power. Instead, we rely on you, our listeners. Your donations not only underwrite this podcast, but also help us produce all of the research and resources that we make available on our website and all of the technical assistance we provide to grassroots organizations. Every year, ILSR's small staff helps hundreds of communities challenge monopoly power directly and rebuild their local economies. So please take a minute and go to ilsr.org and click on the donate button. And if making a donation isn't something you can do, please consider helping us in other ways. You can help other folks find this podcast by telling them about it or by giving it a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. The more ratings from listeners like you, the more folks can find this podcast and ILSR's other podcasts, Community Broadband Bits and Building Local Power. Thanks again for listening. Now, back to the program. Okay, before the break, we talked about how Baltimore's incinerator is a classic case of environmental injustice, aided and abetted by state policy that subsidizes trash burning. Marie, can you talk about how common it is that states allow burning of municipal waste to count as renewable energy? You gave us the number before. And is that a subsidy that's keeping incinerators afloat?
So we discussed how classifying burning trash as a renewable resource is this oxymoron, how quite a number of states, it's quite common, 23 states currently allow municipal solid waste to be included in these definitions, which is quite unfortunate. And so we've been talking about Baltimore. We already mentioned Maryland's case is particularly striking and unfortunate in that it puts trash incineration on the same plane as solar and wind. Not in all of these other states is that always the case. There are some stipulations or where incineration is counted under certain conditions, but 23 states have included incineration in their goals, or in some cases, these more strict renewable portfolio standards. This designation allows incinerators to benefit from the support of renewable energy credits in states, both within states where they might be getting credits toward their electricity production, and then also has implications for out-of-state credits that cities, utilities may be buying to offset other sources of energy. And we see that in Maryland as well. We cite a report showing that in Maryland, for example, ratepayers reportedly spent $84 million over the last decade to purchase these unbundled out-of-state renewable energy credits from Virginia, which is another state that classifies incineration as a renewable resource, and that these credits were from, a majority of these credits are from dirty energy sources. So again, these are sort of indicative of how this industry is funded and supported by these renewable credits and that designation. It allows the power that's generated by facilities. Neil mentioned this a little bit, just about how utilities, how these companies are able to market the energy as this renewable, attractive resource. And so from at least a marketing perspective, in wholesale electricity contracts with utilities, cities, or others, these power purchasers can tout that sort of green nature, and that greenwashing is really quite pervasive in the industry. It's been used, and certainly they've changed the wording. Neil knows this history better than me, but that they've changed the wording to allow it to be more attractive and sound like it's a better source of energy than it is, brushing aside the public health impacts and some of these other negative impacts that we discussed earlier. That said, on the flip side of what state definitions and policies are, there are examples that we found in Rhode Island, for example, of clear bans on municipal solid waste incinerators, or ones that are keeping this explicitly out of their renewable energy goals and definitions. So that's sort of a small positive story, even though that's a rare occurrence in these states we looked at. In some cases, it's just not mentioned at all.
It sounds like that could be a potential opportunity then in how states can address this. Not only, does a state like Maryland need to remove municipal solid waste from its definition of renewable energy, but it's important to also include some sort of language that says you can't buy dirty energy from out of state and count it as renewable here. That if it comes from an incinerator in Virginia or Ohio, that when it's purchased in Maryland, it can't be counted as renewable.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that is a clear opportunity, and we do, I think, call that out in the report.
Neil, I wanted to jump back to this bigger picture around incinerators. You mentioned before that ILSR has worked on helping to stop incinerators, dozens of them across the country. When folks who are building incinerators hear the name Neil Seldman, a fear is stricken in their heart about the fact that they were going to be able to build that incinerator. There have been hundreds on the drawing board, including that one in Curtis Bay that really triggered the action in Baltimore. Who is it that's trying to build trash burners? And, can you tell us about how consolidation in the waste disposal industry is playing a role in the push to develop more of these large facilities?
You're quite correct. Since the Institute was founded in 1974, we've been involved in over 50 of these battles. We won all of them except for 4. The point is that over 400 have been stopped since the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and going into the 2000s. There's only one that has been built, since 1996, and that was in West Palm Beach, Florida. That's a story unto itself, and none has been built since then. To be frank, the citizens and small businesses, there's a playbook on how to kill incinerators, and you could read the playbook and organize your community, and it's more than 50-50, much more than 50-50 that organized citizens will be able to stop it. The consolidation of the solid waste industry is a critical component of this. The first consolidation started in the late 60s, early 70s over buying out haulers and consolidating haulers and creating a virtual monopoly on hauling. At the same time, a virtual monopoly on landfill capacity was developed by these companies. When it comes to incinerators, it was just another form of the consolidators taking control and putting in systems that favored them, not the citizens or the environment. But as I indicated, that effort was stopped cold, and the effort by the waste hauling companies to add incineration a monopoly to their landfill monopoly was shut down. There are remnants of those facilities that were built in the 70s and 80s, such as in Baltimore, such as in Montgomery County. Actually, Montgomery County was built in the 90s. Citizens have been fighting existing plants for 20, 30 years. The prospect of citizens winning in battles against existing incinerators is now improving tremendously, and I think the Baltimore experience is certainly going to help citizens in Detroit, Indianapolis, Newark, New Jersey, and many other cities that still have these incinerators. There are about 50 to 55 garbage incinerators remaining in the state. That's down from over 100 a couple of decades ago. The other important thing, as I said earlier, environmental concerns, people breathing air that has mercury and lead and dioxin, known killers, as well as oxides of nitrogen, which are not killers but certainly impact health, gets people's attention. But it's very important for anyone fighting these plants to have a sense of what's possible. And happily, the recycling movement across the country since the late 60s has shown what can happen. That's both grassroots recyclers and small business recyclers. And that confidence and that merging of pro-recycling and anti-incineration movements has really made a tremendous difference. And the transition away from these incinerators, it can't be done overnight, but it certainly can be done within a 2 to 3 year period. And it's relatively simple. The transition is based on best practices. Composting, which comprises about 30 to 40% of the waste stream, is a very easy alternative to incineration and landfill. The big waste hauling companies fight composting because it has the potential to take away 30 to 40% of their market into a distributed system that's based on local markets and local small businesses. The other part that we recommend, it's not essential, composting is essential. A very helpful tool, which I sometimes refer to as a magic bullet, if there is anything to get people to recycle, is unit pricing, or charging people by the amount of garbage they set out for collection, with composting setouts and recycling setouts either free or much, much less expensive for households to put out. This creates an immediate incentive for households to pay attention to their waste. In fact, we have documented cases through original research as well as other research, other organizational research, that shows that when you put in unit pricing within a year to a year and a half, your overall solid waste stream goes down by 40%. That's a combination of people getting involved in recycling, composting, and source reduction, meaning people don't buy packaging that they're going to bring into their house and then have to pay to get collected in their curbside system. The other thing about unit pricing, also called pay-as-you-throw, save-as-you-throw, SMART, save money, reduce trash, is that it can help civilize American culture. The United States, people in the United States generate 4.5 pounds of garbage a day. It's the most of any country by far in the world. It breaks out to about 3 to 3.5 pounds per day when you take out the amount of recycling we're doing.
You were talking about civilizing America, Neil, and so I hope that you had a solution to political polarization in this?
No, I don't. Although I must say that recycling is not a partisan issue; it's an incumbent issue because incumbents, for many reasons, like big bond issues, which is what your incinerators give you for financial patronage and all kinds of things that go on in our political system. But what I meant is that the United States is a pariah in the world because we generate so much waste, 3 or 4 times what most countries generate. And using a certain type of unit pricing system, the bag system, which allows you to collect organics, used products, textiles, etc., in your curbside recycling program, allows cities to get their per capita waste generation down to less than 1 pound per person. And that's revolutionary. And it would mean that the United States finally, or people in the United States, are finally taking responsibility for the profligate lifestyles we're living, which are generating all this waste. And we can have just as good a lifestyle without all this waste as is being proved by unit pricing systems. There's one other and last major area that cities need to pay attention to, and that's the economic development side of recycling. As you recover materials from the waste stream and process them, you add value to them, meaning jobs and better, higher market prices. And then if you use that material in your region or in your city to manufacture new products, you get another wave of economic stimulation. This is what the Institute for Local Self-Reliance is. The cities control this material. Why not use it and create a local economy? And the job creation, as Marie mentioned, is very important. And to accomplish all this, cities need to designate industrial sites, whether they're continuous or not, as some people call them resource recovery parks, some people call them ecological industrial parks. In California, where these types of recycling parks were created about 20 years ago, they're called recycling market development zones. There are at least 30 of them throughout the state in rural and urban areas, and they give economic benefits, tax breaks, marketing assistance to companies that locate in these parks and use the recovered materials from cities to create new jobs. There are over 100 companies that have located in California, creating thousands of jobs, all because there are available industrial spaces specifically for companies that recycle, compost, and reuse old products.
As usual, you've anticipated my question and offered a lot of things that cities can do. The pay-as-you-throw policy, creating these resource recovery locations. Marie, I was hoping that you could get a last word, too, about maybe one recommendation from the report writ large that either states or cities can do around incineration. And then just warning both of you that, as is our tradition, we like to ask for a reading recommendation in the end of the conversation. So, Marie, tell us something that from the report that communities can pursue that can help them address this problem with incinerators around renewable energy.
Sure. So I think energy is, as we mentioned, a component of this incineration dilemma, perhaps, and cities that are looking for alternatives certainly have more economical, cleaner sources available to them. We recommend that local governments look into ways of investing in solar energy on municipal properties, for example, with savings they might make from transitioning the high costs of waste hauling that they would need to dump at incinerators over to investing in municipal solar sort of pilot projects. And community solar is another great example of really empowering communities that might be near existing incinerators with cleaner sources of energy to renters, to others that have not had access to rooftop solar. So I guess I gave 2 answers, but both of those things can be enabled by state policies as well. So hopefully states make more progressive policies in the future, and I'll plug our community power scorecard that gives more of the state policies that are better than classifying waste incineration as renewable energy for folks that want to learn more.
So I'll make a note before I ask Neil for his reading recommendation that all of the reports or other resources that were discussed in this will be available on the show page. We'll link to them, the Community Power Scorecard, ILSR's research in Baltimore, the playbook on stopping incinerators. But Neil, do you have something that you've been reading recently you'd recommend to our listeners?
Well, I've read them when they came out, but they're two terrific books for people. Paul Connett, Connett, Zero Waste, Saving the World One Community at a Time, really emphasizes the link between organizations such as the Institute and community groups. We have to work together. I mentioned that the Institute had all these victories. They certainly weren't the Institutes alone. We couldn't get to lunch without local partners in all our cities. Another excellent book is Plastic Ocean by Charles Moore, Captain Charles Moore, which deals with the plastic dilemma. The other thing I would suggest, and John already mentioned it, if you go to the Waste to Wealth blog page, we cover these issues of monopoly, single stream, the issue of China, which is important, and citizens can get a very good background just checking out our blog page at Waste to Wealth at ILSR.org.
Thanks, Neil. Marie, what would you recommend?
Book I'm reading now is called Emergent Strategy. I'm not through with it, but it's by Adrienne Marie Brown, who's a Detroit organizer and wears a number of other titles. But I love this kind of quote about what that concept means, about how we intentionally change ways that grow our capacity to embody the just and liberated worlds we long for. And I think learning lessons from anti-incinerator activists and other grassroots folks is just really inspiring to me. So looking forward to finishing that book.
Let me just say there's another great book that just came out by our very good friend Beth Porter at Green America. It's called Reduce, Reuse, Reimagine. And she introduced a great concept, perfect for Baltimore, which has a low recycling rate. Recycling is like an acorn. If you plant it and nurture it, it will become a giant tree of economic, social, and environmental benefits. And thank you for your time.
Thanks for sticking that in. Neil and Marie, thank you both. And all of those book recommendations, we'll have some links to them to where you can purchase them from your local independent bookseller. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Local Energy Rules, where our host John Farrell was speaking with colleagues Marie Donahue and Neil Seldman about the issue of waste incineration and how communities can take action to support cleaner, more economical waste and energy alternatives. For more information about the intersection of waste and energy, we encourage you to dive into ILSR's recent report, Waste Incineration, A Dirty Secret in How States Define Renewable Energy, and coverage of the Baltimore Clean Air Act, available from the Institute's Energy Democracy and Waste to Wealth initiatives at ilsr.org. While you're on our website, we encourage you to explore ILSR's interactive Community Power Toolkit and Community Power Map to learn more about policies and programs that are enabling a local clean energy future. You can also find more than 70 past episodes of the Local Energy Rules podcast. Sign up for one of our newsletters and connect with us on social media. Tune back into Local Energy Rules now every 2 weeks to hear more powerful stories of communities taking on concentrated power to transform the energy system. Until next time, keep your energy local, and thanks for listening.